Good evening. At this time, if you would please silence your cell phones. Be advised these proceedings are being recorded. For those physically present in the council chamber who desire to address the city council during this meeting, please complete a request to speak form. They're available at the front entrance and presented to the city clerk. Speakers physically present and participating via Zoom will be called upon at the appropriate time, and each person is allowed 3 minutes speaking time. Call to order the regular meeting of the City of Grand Terrace City Council for April 12th, 2022. Tonight we have an invocation that will be offered by Pastor Pat Bauer of the Brook Church, and he is coming to us via Zoom. And then immediately following that, Lieutenant Lane, our San Bernardino County Sheriff Lieutenant, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would, stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to read something quickly to you from Psalm 33. What joy for the nation whose God is the Lord, whose people he has chosen as his inheritance. The Lord looks down from heaven and sees the whole human race. And from his throne he observes all who live on the earth. He made their hearts, so he understands everything they do. The best equipped army cannot save a king, nor is it great enough to save a warrior. Don't count on your war horse to give you victory. For all its strength, it cannot save you. But the Lord watches over those who fear him, those who rely on his unfailing love, and he rescues them from death and keeps them alive in times of famine. We put our hope in the Lord, for he is our help and our shield, and in him our hearts rejoice, for we trust in his holy name. Let your unfailing love surround us, Lord, for our hope is in you alone. And Lord, that is the prayer I pray for Grand Terrace City Council tonight, for the meeting at hand, from the wisdom that's needed, and for the blessing that we seek from you, O God. In your name we pray. Amen.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Bauer. Thank you, Lieutenant Lane. Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Allen.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
I am here.
Councilmember Robles. Mayor Pro Tem Hussey.
Here.
Mayor McNabo.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any reordering of, additions to, or removal of items from the agenda?
No additions or deletions.
Thank you. And we have no special presentation, so we'll move to our consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the City Council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of an item from the consent calendar for the discussion. Are there any requests to remove items? Madam City Clerk.
Madam Mayor, I don't actually want to remove an item, but as for clarification, I wanted to, for the record, item number 5, the Planning Commission vacancy, I made a typographical error on the staff report, and Jeremy Briggs' name is there, although it is Jeffrey McConnell.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, once I read the staff report, I realized that it was more than just what the headline was. All right, any requests to remove? Thank you for that clarification. All right, so I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to move the consent calendar.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Allen, second by Mayor Pro Tem Hussey. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson.
Yes.
Councilmember Robles. Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Hussey.
Yes.
Mayor McNabo.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Now, do we have any requests to speak during public comment?
No,
For
Madam Mayor.
items not on the agenda?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Then I'll move beyond that. We have no public hearings. We have unfinished business, though. So item F7, award and approve of an agreement between the City of Grand Terrace and Sweeping Corporation of America LLC for street sweeping services. Conrad Bolowich, City Manager.
Council member, sorry. Thank you. We're revisiting this. It was a fairly contentious issue back in January. My first meeting, it was a real treat to go through that. So a little bit of background. This is the street sweeping contract. It will be a one-year contract. It has actually expired. We've, out of good faith, Sweeping Corporation has continued to do our street sweeping. We've continued to work with them to make sure that everything gets done. Back in November of 2021, we advertised an RFP for street sweeping services. 14 companies were notified. The only one that replied was Clean Street, submitted a bid. It was determined that we'd like to have at least more than one bidder. So there was a second round, was circulated November 30th. Only after that second round, only Clean Street submitted a bid. So after our meeting in January and early February, I personally contacted 8 street sweeping companies and the 3 large trash haulers. And what we found is that over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, Sweeping Corporation of America has essentially consolidated the street sweeping industry and throughout the Inland Empire and most of Southern California. So all of these independent contractors, small mom and pop shops have been bought up. It was really interesting making those phone calls that every time I called somebody and wanted to talk to whoever was in charge, ended up back at the same guy because they were still keeping their old names but going back through one outfit. So with that, we ended up back to one option. The trash haulers do street sweeping as part of their business in some areas. However, both Burtec and CR&R did not have the capacity to help us out. It's just they had too much lead time on getting equipment and people. So as I said, Sweeping Corporation has continued to sweep in good faith, and we've done a couple of changes, and they've implemented those changes proactively. So as a result, our complaints have dropped dramatically. My first month or 6 weeks here, it felt like that's all I dealt with was street sweeping. We've had 2 complaints in the last 2 months, and they've been very, very responsive as far as that. We actually had one today, and I think we've got a solution for them as well. So part of that is using GPS data, doing re-sweeps, and then really being proactive and following up with what they need to do. So in the discussions with Sweeping Corporation, we've come up with a 1-year agreement that is severable on our part at any time with no notification. So that gives us the ability that should something go catastrophically wrong, we can sever the agreement, or should something become available that's too lucrative to pass up, we're not locked in with them. All of their vehicles have been upgraded with GPS for verification. And actually it was really helpful, the couple of complaints we had, we were able to pull up their GPS routes and see that the driver, in one case, actually did not go where he was supposed to be. And on the other one, that yeah, he did, and there was some other things going on. So it's a way for us to get that feedback. One of the issues that they had is they rotated staff, and especially during COVID, it was hard for them to keep regular staff. So they've assigned an individual to do Grand Terrace so that they understand the routes and the areas to be swept. We had so many people cycling in and out that the wrong zones were being swept on the wrong days. Big sections were being double swept and others were being missed. So by having that consistent individual, it's worked out really well. And that all of their operations, rather than go through Clean Street, is going through their corporate Sweeping Corporation, and that they're treating this as a corporate account for them. So just a reminder, we have the 6 zones. 1 and 2 are the first Thursday, 3 and 6 are the second Thursday, and 4 and 5 are the third Thursday of the month. So, and they've been very good about hitting their marks so far. So our recommendation is to award the contract on a 1-year basis, and then authorize me to execute the agreement when we're all done. Any questions?
Thank you. just to clarify, Clean Street is who we have a contract with now, but they are now owned by Sweeping Corporation.
Yes, had our contract not expired with them, we would be doing some type of a contract with the name change, and they would be changing the livery on their vehicles, and we would be seeing Sweeping Corporation in the next 12 months anyway.
Okay, and so who has been doing, Sweeping Corporation has been doing it, or Clean Street has been doing it?
Sweeping Corporation has been doing it.
Okay,
So they've got their driver, their GPS. Essentially, they've sped up their integration for our operation so that they can get us under the corporate umbrella as they integrate other areas.
okay. Questions of staff? Mayor Pro Tem?
One question about the streets and code enforcement. How's it going with our code enforcement not enforcing regulations? I mean, if our streets maintaining the same standards, are people moving their vehicles?
So far, we haven't had a big problem with it. People have been fairly compliant, and I haven't heard any complaints. We haven't driven around and seen those big brown spots where the vehicle's parked and the car isn't there. Just because we're not following the street sweeper also doesn't mean that code enforcement isn't driving through those areas. So on sweeping days, they do make passes in those specific zones. It's just they're not following behind the vehicle like they used to.
So citations are still being issued?
If they're parking on the street on those days, yes.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager. I want to ask you, who is the person that's going to be holding their feet to the fire? I know, you're going to say it's you, but is it code enforcement or is it public work? Who's the one that's going to be going by checking and seeing if they're actually fulfilling their end of the deal?
Actually, any complaints that come in go to Public Works, and right now they're all routed directly to me. So it'll be either somebody from Public Works or me that will go out. With the complaint today, the city ain't that big. So I drove down there, took some pictures of the issue, got on the phone with them, and came up with a resolution. So it'll either be our Public Works group, but ultimately, you're right, it ends up with me. And this is important enough, at least during this phase, that it needs to end up with me, at least until everybody's functioning the way they're supposed to function.
Okay, that's good. I appreciate that. And I do agree that it's important enough it does end up with you. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Further questions? All right, I have one question, and it has to do with the contract. It talks about water. It says on page 201, it says the consultant shall obtain water for sweeping operations at points designated by the city. Necessary water shall be furnished at the expense of the city. Where do they go? Do we have like a lake somewhere that they
No,
can
they
just-
get it here from the yard.
Okay,
As they come through, and they actually, in the pit, we have a roll-off, and they dump whatever they swept up in the pit, and then
okay.
they'll refill their water
So
here.
they make multiple trips back here then during the day?
Yeah, they'll make their trip. But essentially, their brushes sweep all their stuff up, and they have kind of like a Roomba in your house, your vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
When the bucket and the vacuum cleaner is full, then they drive up here and dump it in the dumpster and fill up their water, and then they'll go back out and do another pass.
Okay, thank you. That's my last question. All right, are there any requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, so we'll bring it back to council for consideration of a motion and further deliberation.
Mayor, I will move staff recommendation
Okay,
to both 1 and 2.
all right, thank you. Okay, motion for staff recommendation by Councilmember Allen, second by Councilmember Robles. Is there any further discussion on this item? All right, may we have roll call?
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Hussey?
Yes.
Mayor McNamara?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right. Under new business, we have one item. Direct staff to continue to engage in cooperative actions with neighboring communities and stakeholders and to not form an ad hoc committee to address Wildboro relocation. Again,
So this is one
Mr. Conrad Bolowich, city manager.
Thank you. This is one of the council requested actions at some point late last year. So rather than say it isn't a problem, I wanted to come back and update you on what's going on, where we're at, and then obviously if there still is a desire to have some more direct council input, then we can take action from there. It kind of felt like I brought the boroughs with me, because they were a huge issue down the road, and then when I arrived, they were a huge issue here. So a little bit of background: the wide borough, the boroughs that range throughout the region, everywhere from Beaumont to Grand Terrace. And what was surprising is, as I dug into this, they can go 10 miles without water, and can lose as much as 30% of their body water, and drink it and replace it in 5 minutes. If a person can lose 10%, they go in the hospital and it takes days to recover that amount. So they're really pretty remarkable animals, which also means they're not tethered to any place in the hills as far as a water source. Any place where they can get a drink, they'll be there. So they eat a wide variety of plants. Those of us that have lived on the edge know that they eat everything from roses to sagebrush. Females give birth to one colt a year normally. They weigh about 350 pounds as an adult, which is a pretty substantial. They look like small animals, but they're pretty substantial, which is the reason we don't want people going out and petting them and playing with them. They are wild animals. And in this area, they have no natural predators. Nothing competes with them, and there's no common diseases. There is somewhere in those mountains one mountain lion that I'm assuming is a predator for them, but that's a lot of burrow for one mountain lion to take care of. And they can live up to be 25 years old. So the region that we're looking at, like I said, goes from Beaumont down here in Highway 60, all the way up into Redlands, Loma Linda, backside of Moreno Valley. There's multiple herds going through that, living in that area, ranging across it. Last year, with the drought conditions becoming even worse, overpopulation of, again, they don't have any predators, and they live a fairly long time, and they've just eaten themselves out of house and home is what it's worked out to be. Especially towards the end of the winter, when there wasn't much greenery, they started coming down into town looking for food and water. So they're not aggressive, but they do tend to forage where they can find forage, and their droppings are just a mess every place, parks and any place they can get to. So what we're doing is we've worked with multiple agencies, BLM, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game, all of the adjacent communities, to kind of manage this as a group thing and share the resources across. We coordinate relocation. There's actually a group of cowboys out of Moreno Valley that will come in and round up the burros, and then we work with Donkeyland out of Ritchie Canyon that coordinates transportation of those. There's a couple of vendors that we also use for rounding up and transportation. What's really great with Donkeyland is when they have the animals there, is they'll alter the males so we can start to cut into the reproductive habits and kind of over time manage that herd size. And like I said, it's the different agencies, everybody that has issues is kind of sharing those resources, and it's not unusual, or wasn't unusual when they were really rampaging through, to have the horse trailer come through, Grand Terrace, pick up 5 or 6 of them, go over to Moreno Valley, pick up part of a herd, and then grab a couple on the way back into Donkeyland on the backside. So it's been a very good coordination of resources. What we can expect is it's not going to go away. They're going to keep coming down out of the hills. Right now, they're up in the hills. They don't particularly like to hang out with people, just like we don't like to hang out with them. So there's forage up there, especially during the spring now with the rains. Nice green stuff's coming up, so they're happy up there eating what they can eat. They will, as things dry out, as there's less forage, they will come back down, and we're going to have to round them up and move them around. There is some work with BLM and a donkey conservancy in Texas that's working on some relocation outside of the region, but we have not done anything substantial along those lines yet. And this is going to take years to resolve. It's taken 30 years to get here. It's going to take time for it to go away. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bolowich. Any questions of staff? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Conrad. Yeah, I go hiking up there, and I found like 4 springs and stuff, and it looks like somebody made water troughs for them up there, but you're right, the concern is during the end of the time, the summertime or before winter, and then we have 40 donkeys walking up and down, Mount Vernon, and the problem was with the school too, the kids driving, and that was the big concern on parents were, the donkeys were out there in the middle of the lane doing that, but I noticed over there in the area that they're even building more homes. The KB Homes, what's their involvement in relocating the donkeys in Riverside County? Do you know anything about that, or do they buy some land for them, or?
I don't know that there's any habitat conservation restoration. So as the houses push farther into the hills, their habitat gets eaten up, and there's not any replacement done for them, if that's your question.
Yeah, because I was wondering, because that's Riverside County, if they had a contingency making them buy so many acres to put aside for donkey land.
I don't know that they're doing that, or if they are doing that.
Can you find out for me?
I will find out for you.
Thank you.
Further questions? All right, seeing none, I'll open it up to public comment. Is there anybody wishing to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, so we'll close public comment. Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
report and your work, and I'm really glad that you're familiar with this issue.
More than I want to be.
Because you could imagine coming here and saying, I have to deal with what now? All right, we'll bring it back to council for consideration of a motion and further discussion. Direction to staff?
Yeah, item G, recommendations, staff continue their efforts. So I make the motion, staff continue their efforts.
Thank you.
Working with other communities in managing the wild burros in our city.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Allen, second by Mayor Pro Tem Hussey. Any further deliberation on this item? All right, may we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Hussey?
Yes.
And Mayor McNamara?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, we have no request for future agenda items, so we will go to City Council communications, beginning with Councilmember Jeff Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. So I was scheduled to attend the city-county conference that we had last week, but I was unable to because of a sudden injury that I had, medical condition. So I just wanted to say what I'm thankful for is that how well we worked together as a team up here on the dais, and so that I couldn't go, but I know that there were others of us that went, and that I did read the agenda and I read the supporting documents, but I'll gladly defer to all of my fellow council members who did attend, that for their more informed report than what I would be able to give. So excuse me for that. But I did attend last Saturday the T-ball field dedication here in town, the ceremony for dedicating the T-ball field to Kyle Bacon, and I really am glad that we were able to do that for the T-ball field, and thank the Kyle Bacon's family for making that possible. And I just want to, in closing, encourage and remind folks who know about it or who may not know about it, the Grand Terrace High School Senior Engineering Showcase is coming up on April 28th at 5:30 p.m. in the high school cafeteria. Matt Johnson is the teacher over there who leads this program, and I've been watching it for several years. I helped judge the event one year, and it's amazing what these students of engineering can come up with. I encourage you to go there. You will be amazed and amused and encouraged about our future just going over there and watching and listening to them. So yeah, April 28th at 5:30. You'll really enjoy it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Doug Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. also attended the T-ball dedication. And then on last Friday, along with the mayor, I attended the San Bernardino Valley College dedication, or their groundbreaking for the workforce development situation, which is an item that is very close to my heart. And it was 100 degrees, for sure. And I was silly enough to wear a suit. And I did park all the way down on the south end. So I got the abnormal test of going all the way up to the north end and then coming back down. And I can guarantee you that the pioneers that came through San Bernardino back in the 1850s had quite a challenge, because for my 2 miles it was a challenge. Anyway, it was an interesting group that talked about the new building that's going to be going there. It's one of the last old building that has been functioning since the 1960s. And I think that this is a key item to be able to provide for those who either don't have the resources to be able to go to a non-trade school, or just feel that their talent lies in things they can do with their hands. And at this point, they've got electronics as well as a whole host of different classes that they've got set up. And I've heard about this program before, and I think the new facility is going to help a lot. So we were well represented, and I appreciate the opportunity to gather together and to chat with some of the folks. And I really appreciate how the Assemblywoman's husband managed to get the money to come home to this area, because it took a lot of effort to see that check written and signed by the governor that went right straight to this building. And it's supposed to be done in like 2 or 3 years. So hopefully they'll beat their schedule, and then we'll have a lot of opportunity for people to do some good things, some good work there. And I think that's it, except, and I guess it bends towards a personal situation, those that live along the Observation Drive area, there is a coyote in the greenbelt that is not a public greenbelt, but it's a private greenbelt between there and, I guess it's Dos Rios, anyway, that has been real comfortable in that green area and has been hunting the dogs and the cats down along there, and it's not too scared of people, but I've already phoned in a message about it on Monday, and I am confident that our folks will grab a hold of that and make sure that it gets transported to where it belongs. You know, we get them about once a year, so one gets brave and decides to sit down there and just kind of wait for its feeding, and I just assumed it wasn't my dog. Anyway, that's all I've got, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Councilmember Sylvia Robles.
So, I guess I'm the only council member that ended up going to the city-county conference, and the law requires that wherever they spend money, for us to attend something that we have to report, so I'm going to give a fairly good report. The first conference item was about housing, and they had a panel discussion, and what I found really refreshing was one of the people said, you know, ADUs and split lots that we all argue about and spend the most grief about are the least likely things to happen and are not going to solve the housing crisis.
Councilmember Rose, can you speak it to the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or turn it on.
I'll start over. So I attended the city-county conference. The first item was on housing. They had a panel discussion. The first thing that one of the gentlemen talked about was that ADUs and split lots that we have the most discussion, arguments, and all that about are the least likely items that will happen, the least likely items that would ever solve the kind of housing crisis we have. He says, you know, the governor said that he was going to create X amount of housing units, and that hasn't happened because The state cannot build housing for local governments. Local governments have to figure out the housing crisis. And what we need is multi-family housing. And then to segue to the end of the conference, we had Cal City's lobbyists on our behalf speak, and they said they've been talking to the legislature about cities are getting whiplash because they keep doing all these housing measures, and it doesn't help because all it does is aggravate the local level. So that's where we're at on that. The other item I attended was about code enforcement for illegal cannabis. And it's interesting because through the years, as we've seen cannabis legalized, there is also new areas to be plowed as far as getting cases that they can actually prosecute. So we got a good, and how the cities and counties with this, and the county with a large incorporated area with this problem are dealing with that. So they have a good template, should we ever need it, to get started. At the end of the conference, we had the economic forecast, which is actually pretty good, and it's available, but I looked at it and I was too tired to have to sign in. It's a public information, but they want for you to sign up for something, then they'll give it to you. But it was really good because before we always heard over and over from economists how sad it was for San Bernardino County. We had the least educated workforce. We had the highest unemployment, and on and on and on. And that is not the truth anymore. We're just as good as any other county in those areas as far as education, job market. The other thing that was interesting, he showed there was some really good ratios between income and mortgage debt, income and rental debt, and there's good margins in there. People, based on these ratios, are not really over financed. But it did show some trends as far as people leaving Los Angeles area, particularly, and leaving actually the state. The economists felt that what we could do best for this region was to build multi-housing so we could keep, the better workforce and the things that are working to make the Inland Empire better. And we had an astronaut of Mexican descent who spoke, and it was a very inspirational because it touched on some issues that happened to when I was trying to mentor women getting back into the workforce or younger people, and they want to start at the top. And he talked about how his family were migrant workers, and they didn't spend their school years all in one place, and they were going to be leaving, and the teacher went and spoke to the parents and said, you can't, just like if you were planting a fruit tree, you can't keep replanting it because it won't bear fruit or it will die or be stunted. So he said his parents only had third grade educations, and I don't know how they did it, but they would make him do homework, and they would check it, because I had a lot more education than that, and I didn't fare so well. And he talked about, he told his father he wanted to be an astronaut, and he was rejected, at least 10 or more times, and he would look to see what his competition was, and if they did scuba diving, he would learn scuba diving. If they were airline pilots, he would learn how to be a pilot. And he learned Russian, and he also worked as a NASA engineer on a project that worked on mammograms for women, and that got him some interest from folks. So he finally was able to do it. So he and he always said strategize and on what your goals are to get there. And I stayed in a rickety 1930 hotel. I swear the floors were like, you would think they were going to give out on you. And so there were some weird stairs and all that. And so I forgot my iPad because I was so busy trying to strategize how I was going to get several bags out. And so the city clerk was kind enough to have, I don't know our staff member's name that lives in Arrowhead.
Deborah Thomas.
Oh, you did it? Oh, she went and got it for me. I'm so thankful. I mean, I was like, I haven't traveled in a long time, so I was like, do I have everything? And I sleep with it, so it can wake me up. But, the other thing I just wanted to bring up is maybe a little housekeeping, sure. You know, we're going to have a discussion again with the ad hoc committee. And I was wondering to expose another council member, and hopefully Bill Hussey, because he got a lot of calls, if he might sit in on my spot this next meeting, so we could have another person that's getting firsthand how this is playing out.
Mr. City Attorney?
On what issue, I'm sorry?
Our ad hoc, if he could act as an alternate.
The ad hoc regarding what issue, I'm sorry?
The orange
Oh.
brave noise.
I would actually recommend not to do that.
Okay.
Because you have two.
Oh,
If you
yeah,
bring in a
okay, I see
third,
what you
that's
mean.
a
Yeah.
potential Brown Act issue, so
Right.
I would say no.
Okay, well then, I would think at some point we need to have a closed session on this item. And I think, if we need 2 or 3 of us to express interest in that before we do it?
I'll discuss it with the city manager.
Okay.
We'll
All right,
find out
and that's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Robles. Mayor Pro Tem Bill Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. I too was honored and blessed to attend the dedication of the field for Kyle Bacon. You know, I was honored by get to be one of his last coaches, and that was a brave young man in this city, you know, fighting cancer and always smiling. Great kid, great family, you know, and it was just an honor seeing our little city come together and just honor this young man. So that was a blessing. And one other thing, I mean, I really don't like to, you know, we get mail up here, and when I see something from Gavin Newsom, I usually put it to the side, but this is a good letter, Redevelopment Successor Agency Disillusion. You know, Terry, thank you. Thank you, and, you know, thank you for the council that did this, yes. So when I'm reading this letter, I'm thinking about future council members and mayors thinking, thank God this council did this, you know, because, you know, we want to do stuff that's, you know, that we weren't afraid to do. And we're looking for the future to take care of this. And I know there's a lot of heartache and a lot of work and everybody pulled together, but, you know, for us to get through this and, you know, be the first one, you know, this is a big step. And, yeah, it's a great letter right there. And Easter is coming up this Sunday, and it's one of our Christians' sacred days. And I just want to leave with this, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. And I just want to wish everybody a blessed Easter, and God bless. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My report includes a few updates from Omnitrans from their board meeting. We are actually looking now at restoring service levels, and there's a plan to do that. They're looking at restoring the 30-minute frequency, hopefully targeted between August 2022 and January 23. It will depend, of course, on ability to hire coach operators. That's one of the things that's holding them back right now. And then they're looking at the restoring of the 15-minute frequency by May 2022. So that's good news. They've had a lot of riders getting to know the system with their free fares, but they know that they can't make it on free fares forever. So I really am impressed with the way that they are planning on bringing back service and actually finding good ways to pay for it. So they also are continuing their bus stop safety upgrades. Now they're actually working on solar lighting for the evenings to make sure that the areas are well lit. And then with the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority board meeting, we looked at the Measure I expenditures that were compliant with Measure I for last fiscal year, and money is being spent where it's supposed to be spent, and that's always good news. We received and filed an update on the Ontario International Airport project, where there'll be a tunnel that will transport people from the Metrolink station in Rancho Cucamonga to the airport in a subterranean manner that will save money and it should be actually less effective to the the environment when they create that instead of an above-ground transport that way. So that allows anyone on a Metrolink to transfer in Rancho Cucamonga, get on this tunnel, and move forward. So we're taking another look at that. We had originally began to enter into an agreement with the boring company. And so those discussions sort of slowed down, and what was decided is that SBCTA would look at moving forward in the manner that they generally do with their projects, so that we've we're going to be hiring a contractor to do the environmental study, and then we will put out to bid again for the tunneling project. And then also, we looked at Measure I Valley Major Street Project Program allocation planning for fiscal year 2022 and 2023, and how that affects us is that's going to be the Measure I money that we get for our local roads here in Grand Terrace. And so that went through. I also, as my colleagues mentioned, was at the T-ball field dedication. Very honored to be able to do that. I'm very pleased with our Park and Rec Commission and their involvement in this, in having a public meeting, making sure that this was still something that the public embraced, and they certainly did. The design of the sign was wonderful. And thank you to Rigo, who actually set it up so that we had something that would hide the sign until it was time to go, and then he fixed it so that we could just pull it off magically. So I appreciate his efforts there. The Advanced Technology Building at the San Bernardino Valley College that Councilmember Wilson brought up, very happy to be there and to hear that our legislators are bringing money home, because the more that we get this region on the map with the good things that we're doing, the more opportunity we have for money to come from state, and I believe we actually maybe even got some federal dollars for this particular one. So that's good that they're paying attention to us. And then the news that Councilmember Robles was talking about, we're being known for having educated populations and good workforce, and that really gives us a better opportunity for things in the future. So I will end there. And I will move on to City Manager Communications. Do you have any communications for us?
I don't have anything, but Lieutenant Lane had some activities that he wants to share with you.
All right, thank you. Lieutenant Lane.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. So wanted to take a few minutes, if I can get my phone to work here, and just talk about last Friday's operation that we did here in the city. We utilized some crime suppression monies that were offered to us by the Board of Supervisors. And they have provided monies to cities in the county to conduct enhanced or increased law enforcement activities in cities throughout the region. So this was our second operation, and it was last Friday. So between the hours of 9 and 7, we did some targeted direct traffic enforcement here in the city, so I have some statistics for you. We had 5 units out there conducting traffic. In total, there were 89 vehicle code citations written, 5 misdemeanor vehicle code arrests were made, and 3 warrant arrests were made. We went into a further breakdown as to what those citations were, and surprisingly, speed was not the most cited offense that day, but we did write 47 citations for failing to stop at stop signs, and that's probably no surprise either. Second hit on the list was speed. We wrote 14 citations for that. The rest were sort of a hodgepodge of equipment violations and some cell phone violations. One of the things that I took a special note of was sort of focusing on one deputy's efforts. This deputy is assigned to traffic. He works Loma Linda normally, but he is one of our most trained traffic guys that we have, so we put him out there that day, and we had him kind of operate somewhat independently from the other units that were out there. And the reason I did that was to try to get a glimpse at what one full-time traffic officer could do in the city. And again, this is just over one day, but should we ever get to that point where a traffic officer comes back into play for us, this is what we might look for. So he conducted a total of 33 stops. He wrote 17 violations for stopped 17 cars for speed, wrote 14 violations, wrote 7 violations for failing to stop at stop signs, and then a couple equipment violations. So over the course of that day, he was very proactive, very busy. I think we made note on the 92313. So it didn't take long for folks to notice that we were out there, but you couldn't drive down Barton or Mount Vernon without seeing a couple units out there with their lights on. So I appreciate the time. I just wanted to make sure that you heard what those statistics were. We have one operation left that we're going to be putting on, I think probably in the first or second week of June. That'll be a nighttime operation on a Saturday, and I will provide the city manager with further details as we arrange those.
All right, thank you, Lieutenant Lane. And I know we appreciate the attention. All right, so we have no closed session tonight. We will adjourn to our next regular city council meeting, which will be held on Tuesday, April 26, 2022, at 6 p.m. Any request to have an item placed on future agenda must be made in writing and submitted to the city clerk's office, and the request will be processed in accordance with city council procedures. We are adjourned.